I am so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. I am so stressed out, I don't know what to do. Have you ever been in that situation?
We're put to the trial, and then it's the purpose of that is to increase us in our empathy, right? In our compassion.
No, I'm not worried at all. I rely on God, Allah.
If you look at the situation that we're in, it's hard to find the good in the situation. There's a lot of stress people are dealing with. And this stress and this anxiety is a very major component of this isolation, of this lockdown, of this pandemic that we're facing. This really tests the state of who we are, what's in our hearts. People at this point that I've spoken with, they are all willing to accept that this virus is bigger than us. You know what I mean? It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than nations. And I want you to think about this. When you are in your most helpless state, you become indecisive. Your most helplessness is associated with indecision. So, for example, have you seen somebody, or you maybe have experienced this yourself, where you say to yourself, I am so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. I am so stressed out, I don't know what to do. Have you ever been in that situation? So at this moment, when this pandemic in Canada is really affecting our everyday life, it's made a disruption in our everyday life, this is the moment. This is a mawqif. This is a fork in the road where we should now turn more towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most helpless you can be is indecisive. You don't know what to do. You don't know what the truth is. You don't know what to follow. You don't know how to get out of your situation. Sometimes you don't know what's right and what's wrong. So, when you speak to people about this, when you bring it in that line of logic and thinking, everyone's readily willing to accept that. Yeah, you're right. This virus is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than all of us. So they're willing to accept that this virus is bigger than all of us. Then could you conceive that there is something bigger than this virus? At this state, because they're feeling the negative effects and the ferocity of this virus, right? They're willing to humble themselves and say, yes, there is something bigger than I. And then it's like, can you conceive then that there is something bigger and more powerful than this virus, which has completely stopped this world? Can you think about maybe something that started this world in the first place? And a lot of times people, they don't have a sense of peace, okay? From a deen perspective, an Islamic perspective, we understand that our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he describes the Muslim, the mu'min in different ayat in the Quran. But there's a specific line of a hadith that I want to reference. Inna amrahu kullahu khayrun. That it's all good. Essentially, it is all good for the believer. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Anfal, ayah 29, O you who believe, if you have taqwa of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you discrimination, the ability to discriminate between what is right and what's wrong, and a way to get out of every difficulty and erase your bad deeds from you and forgive you. Taqwa is a state of God consciousness, that you are aware of your Creator.
We have to really come to terms with our characterization of what success is.
Yes.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He described who's successful, right? Somebody who has a belief in the unseen and connects with his or her Creator and spends and cares for people, and believes in the Prophet. Said, these are the successful.
There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which has been so important to me to try to understand why these things are happening to us. He said, this my nation is a nation that has mercy on it. Its punishment is not in the next life, but the punishment is in this world. And he mentioned three things: fitan, zalazul, qatl. Fitan is the plural of fitna, and that is a trial, a tribulation, a gray area. I mean, what could be a bigger fitna than the COVID-19 and what is going on?
This is one of the interesting aspects of when Allah tests us. Sometimes Allah will test us, and sometimes we'll be put in a certain situation where we lose something, or we're put to the trial, and then it's the purpose of that is to increase us in our empathy, right? In our compassion.
People are dealing with financial situations where they don't know how they're going to pay their bills. People are dealing with evictions. People are dealing with not having basic money to pay utilities. People's jobs are in question. People's businesses that they built for years under threat. Yet, inna amrahu kullahu khairan. That it's all good. For the believer, it's all good. What if you get the disease? Is it still going to be good? What if you have close people around you that succumb to the disease? Is it still all good? What if, because of this lockdown, it pushes the limits of your self-control, of your patience? Is it still all good? It just reveals, it's like that test. It's like you can have two pieces of metal that look exactly the same. You can have something that looks like real gold and it's right beside false gold and it looks exactly the same. How do you tell the difference between the two, the qualities of each piece of metal? You have to test it. You put one under pressure and you see which metal crushes first. Put one under heat, which one is going to melt first. You put something into stress, you're going to see which one is going to break first. In this type of situation, it really reveals the state of who a person is.
What happens is when you and I are living our day-to-day lives, we have all these blessings. Sometimes we forget that these are blessings. It's only when they're taken away and then we start looking and pondering upon people that perhaps were, that don't have those blessings, right? And the only reason that we're now woken up to that is because we ourselves now understand, okay, now we don't have that blessing.
And so this is just, as they say, the tip of the iceberg. That's all this COVID-19 is.
So for many of us living in the West, every day maybe we weren't thinking about how we will survive, but now we are thinking about this and it causes us to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this adversity could be a massive mercy to us. You got to ask yourself those deeper why questions. This is an opportunity for us to do it because it's easier in adversity. And our ability to have these thoughts about Allah, about the ayat of Quran, for example, that strengthens that inner voice. And that's why, for example, people can have a tough time being alone. They might be quiet, or they might on the outset look very, very peaceful, but there isn't that peace because they have a lot of questions, they have a lot of confusion in their life, and it doesn't have a direction to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yunus alayhi salam, when he was thrown into the blackness of the sea, covered in the blackness of the night, and then swallowed by a whale and isolated upon layers of isolation from the rest of the world. In this state, by himself, in a life-threatening and very stressful scenario, what does Yunus alayhi salam do? What is the reaction of Yunus alayhi salam? He made sujood in a place that nobody else had made sujood before. In that state of isolation, he did an act of worship. He turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where no one else had done that before. And one could say is that because no one had the opportunity to do that before. So remember when we talked about struggle, dealing with struggle? Remember when we spoke about how you can sometimes become overwhelmed with anxiety and negative and evil thoughts within yourself? As soon as a little bit of evil, calamity, trials, tribulations, anything harmful touches you, oh man, why? Why do I have to go through this stress? Why me? Okay. And this is different than the understanding of Ayyub alayhi salam. Think about the intercommunication Ayyub alayhi salam had within himself. That no, Allah blessed me for so long. If I'm going through this disease, if I'm going through this leprosy, Job didn't start blaming the world. Job did not start having negative thoughts about Allah. Ayub alayhi salam was more grateful at that time. Ayub alayhi salam had so much etiquette when he made supplication to Allah. If you think it is better for me, then remove this from me. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him in that situation, put him in that opportunity. Because what we would sometimes say is that I'm in this prison, I'm in this situation, I'm in this scenario, I'm under this test, I'm under this trial. But rarely do we say I've been given this opportunity to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rarely do we say I have an opportunity to do something great, perhaps, with this environment or the conditions that I've been placed in. Look at the intracommunication with Ayub when physically he's deteriorating, when his wealth is gone, his family is gone. Think about how powerful that intracommunication was, because it was strengthened with Iman. It was based in Iman. This is the Prophet of Allah making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his moment of need, in his moment of opportunity. Everything is good for the believer. That state of taqwa, okay? If you have taqwa, gives you that ability to differentiate what decision you should make. He gives you that furqan. He gives you that criterion of what you should do. Think about this. If you know what to do, you can get out of bad situations. And this is how important taqwa is, okay?
If you are bankrupt spiritually, you're really not anywhere near success. And this is a proof for us that people should really return to their creator, to their soul. And for you to develop your soul, you have to go to the one who understands your soul. Just like for you to maintain your car, consult your manual, which is not a complicated thing, but the soul which we don't understand, every proud person is saying, I don't need a God to tell me what to do with my soul, when you don't understand your soul.
I suggest anybody who's having, spiritually emotional issues to go through the Quran. Okay? That was my rehab. The Quran is a shifa. Okay? Surah Al-Duha. It's the Surah Al-Duha. Alam nashra laka sadrak. These are the cures for depression.
Subhanallah.
In these ayat. Because what Allah is telling you in these particular ayat, how to alleviate the harm. Instead of talking about all the bad stuff, talk about all the good stuff, that the ni'mah of Allah that has got you. Okay? Go to the poor person and feed them. Okay? Go to the person that doesn't have and give them. This will give you such a high. And it'll defeat all those negative thoughts, right? And this is what these two surahs look at. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Look at the beautiful morning time. Look at the night when it's peaceful. Your Lord is not angry with you. وَمَا قَلَى. He ain't left you. And that hereafter is going to be better for you.
If we want to know how our soul should be guided, we should go to the divine guidance. That is the only source, because nobody can tell you what the soul is except the one who created it.
Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says in a hadith that it is strange, wondrous, the affair of the believer, because there is good for him in every matter. And this is not the case with anyone except the believer. If he is happy, he is thankful to Allah, and that's good for him. And if he is harmed, he shows patience, and that is good for him. It is all good for the believer.
Do I feel that the New York police are providing enough protection, or do I have to have protection of my own? I look for protection from Allah.